That's the question of the morning, as Brandon has already shared with us. Who is Jesus? Now, there are a lot of texts that we could be looking at this morning, but I just want to go into an area that might not be immediately the one that you would consider to answer this question. Who is Jesus? And why is it a question anyway? Brandon, I think you said, well, we know who he is. I hope we do. But one of the things that we have to be careful about is thinking we know the answer. One of the things we have to be careful about when we're talking to people is thinking that we understand each other. So we ask the question, who is Jesus? And we'll look at Paul's letter to the church of Colossae, just a few verses out of chapter 1. So Colossians chapter 1, if you want to turn there. Or if you don't have your Bible, I was considerate. I put it on the screen for you. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. Lord, we thank you for your word this morning. Well, I'm indebted to an Anglican minister by the name of Jeffrey Smead for his ideas on the text this morning. And Brother Smead tells an interesting story about a renowned theologian, a professor of theology, world famous for his work. He was invited by the religion department of one of those big fancy Ivy League type universities to be the guest speaker for an annual conference. Well, this renowned theologian had a packed lecture hall, and he spoke for nearly 2 hours. And his talk was on the idea that the resurrection of Jesus could not possibly have happened. He spent his time citing so-called proof from a variety of sources. He cited other scholars, and he cited books that seem to support this idea that the resurrection of Jesus was some kind of myth. And he concluded that since there were so many, quote, expert sources that found no support for the idea of an actual resurrection of Jesus, that the faith tradition of Christianity was without foundation. Historical Christianity, he claimed, based as it is on the idea of a physical resurrection, was just emotional mumbo-jumbo. Because he claimed Jesus never rose from the dead in any literal sense. So this esteemed professor finished his lecture and stepped back from the podium and asked if there were any questions. Back in the room, rather disheveled older fellow, like the cartoon, I couldn't find a picture that imaged this. But this gives you the idea. Older fellow, kind of a rumpled suit, hair sort of disarray, snowy white head. Got up and said, "Dr. Professor, I have one question." And all the eyes turned around. All eyes were on him. He reached into his lunch sack started eating. Lunch. My question is a simple question. Now, I've never read those books you told us about. I never learned to recite scriptures in the original Greek. I know very little about the teachings of Niebuhr and Heidegger. You finished the apple. Aren't you glad? All I want to know, Dr. Professor, is this. Is this apple I just ate bitter or sweet? The professor was taken aback. He paused for a moment, straightened his jacket a bit, answered in a very scholarly fashion. My dear fellow, I cannot possibly answer that question, for I haven't tasted your apple. The elderly gentleman who had identified himself as a retired preacher dropped the core of the apple in his lunch bag, looked up at the professor and said calmly, "Neither, sir, have you tasted my Jesus." The entire lecture hall erupted in applause. The professor hurriedly thanked his audience and made a quick exit. "Neither, sir, have you tasted my Jesus." Well, if you have not tasted my Jesus, then you're in as bad a shape as the professor in that story this morning. You might know about Jesus, but you don't really know him. So we ask the question this morning, who is Jesus? And our text gives us some valuable insight. Certainly not the only text